measure and draw angles. Okay, so this would be on how to measure and draw angles. So the first step is to draw a horizontal. Okay, so first we're going to write out the steps. These steps might not make sense right now, but then when we actually start doing the examples, you'll see. Okay, then after, in step 2, once you draw your horizontal, you're going to determine whether you're going to use the left or the right side of your horizontal as your vertex. So you're going to draw an endpoint on the horizontal to determine the vertex. Okay, and then step 3, you're going to draw an arrow on the other end to represent a ray or one of the sides of the angle. Okay, so this is going to represent one of the sides of the angle. Okay, then step 4, you're going to put the center of the protractor on the vertex and align it with the horizontal and with 0 degrees. So you're going to place the center of your protractor on the vertex that you drew and align it with the horizontal. And you have to align it with 0 degrees. Okay, so step 5, you're going to either measure clockwise or counterclockwise depending on where 0 degrees is. Okay, then you're going to locate the degree measure and draw a mark. And then lastly, once you've located the degree measure that you're drawing or finding, then you line up the vertex with the mark and draw a ray from the vertex. Okay, and this is going to be the second side of your angle. Okay, so when we actually go through and practice drawing these angles, it will make much more sense. Okay. So now we're going to try example number 1A. So I'm going to shift to paper now. And it might be a little blurry at first, but I'll adjust if necessary. Okay, so first we're going to draw an angle that measures 65 degrees. So first draw your horizontal, just like we outlined in your steps. So draw a straight line using the straight edge part of your protractor. Just draw a straight line. And then you're going to determine if you want the left side or the right side to be your vertex. I'm going to use the right side. So that's my vertex. And I'm going to line up my protractor. These protractors that I have here have a center, okay? There's a hole that you can line up with your vertex. Not all protractors have the same thing to determine the vertex. Some of them just have a straight line here, like a little mark. So not all of your protractors have a hole. They're all different. So what you want to do is line up the vertex with the center of your protractor and your horizontal with 0 degrees. So if I go to the left, that horizontal, I want to find where 0 degrees is. So notice how there's numbers at the top row and the bottom row. The numbers at the top row start at 0 and then go 10, 20, and so forth. And then there's numbers in between, of course. And then the numbers at the bottom, notice how it's 170, and then the next value would be 180. So that means we're going to have to use the top row to measure because you always want to locate 0 degrees. So we're going to go clockwise all the way to 65, and we're going to draw a little mark indicating where 65 degrees would be. So that mark just indicates where 65 degrees is. It doesn't mean we have to extend our second side all the way to that mark. So now I line up my vertex and that mark using my protractor, and I'm going to draw a ray along that straight path. So I don't have to extend all the way to that mark because anything along this path here is 65 degrees. Okay, it's going to form a 65-degree angle with the other side. So I can stop there, and I can put my arrows at the end to indicate that these are the two sides of my angle. Those are the two rays that form the angle. So this guy that I drew originally would be my horizontal, and that is the first side of my angle. And then the other ray would be my second side. And then I measured clockwise, and that angle is 65 degrees. So then I label my angle with its measure. Okay, part B, I'm going to sketch my horizontal. So there's my horizontal. Then I'm going to determine which side's going to be my vertex. So I'm going to use the left side this time. So I take my protractor and line up my protractor with my vertex. So I take the center of a protractor, line it up with the vertex, and then my horizontal needs to be lined up with 0 degrees. So if I go here to the right where my horizontal ends, notice that 0 degrees would be at the bottom row. Okay, the top row it wouldn't, because we have 170 and then the next value would be 180. So we always start at 0 degrees. So 0 and 125 degrees, we're going to use the bottom row and go all the way to 125. So there's 120, 125 would be 5 units after that. And now I'm going to take my vertex and line it up with that mark. And anything along this path is going to form a 125 degree angle with the other side. So I don't have to go all the way to that mark. That mark is just to help me indicate where 125 degrees would be. So then I draw my rays or my arrows at the end of the two sides, and I measured counterclockwise to 125 degrees. Okay, number 2. Again, you're going to draw your horizontal. So start with your horizontal. And I'm going to use the right side as my vertex. So I'm going to just practice using both ends. It doesn't matter which end you use. So 155 degrees, I'm going to line up the center of my protractor with the vertex and my horizontal with 0 degrees. So when I do that, 0 degrees would be at the top row. So I'm going to measure clockwise all the way to 155. So that's going to go into the other problem, but that's okay because the mark is only to help me indicate where 155 degrees would be. Then I line up my mark and my vertex. I draw a straight line. Okay, I don't have to extend all the way to that mark. I draw arrows at the end of both sides of my angle, and that is the two rays that form the angle. And then this angle was measured clockwise, and it was 155 degrees. Okay, part B. Draw a horizontal line. Okay, I'm going to use the left side as my vertex this time. And then I line up my protractor with my vertex and my horizontal with 0 degrees. And 0 degrees would be using the bottom row of the numbers on the protractor, or degrees, and I go all the way to 25 degrees. make my mark, and then I line up my vertex with that mark, and I draw a straight line. So any part of that ray is going to form a 25-degree angle with the other ray. So this I measured counterclockwise, 25 degrees. Okay, so that's drawing angles on this first page. Now we're going to go to page 15, and we're going to measure angles and classify them. So in number 3, you can use any of these sides as your horizontal. Okay, B is going to be the vertex no matter what. So I line up my protractor with my vertex and my horizontal, which is BC. I'm going to use BC as my horizontal. I line that up with 0 degrees, and I'm going to be using the bottom row to measure because my horizontal is lined up with 0 degrees, and 0 degrees belongs in the bottom row. So if I go counterclockwise, that angle would measure 90 degrees. So this angle is 90 degrees. Usually you're going to see a box that indicates that an angle measures 90 degrees. That means it's a right angle. And now here on your paper it says M and then angle ABC. So the M stands for measure. So what that means is the measure, and this symbol that looks like less than is actually the symbol for an angle. So the measure of angle ABC is 90 degrees. So it's a shorthand notation for writing out that the measure of the angle is 90. And because it's a 90-degree angle, that means this would be a right angle. Okay, number 4. So again, we're going to take our protractor and line it up with our vertex. Then line up our horizontal with 0 degrees. And 0 degrees would be the bottom row. So I'm going to go counterclockwise, and that angle measures 30 degrees. Now, a way that you can also tell if this angle would be 30 or 150 is look at the size of the angle. This angle looks acute. If it were 150 degrees, it would be an obtuse angle. So there's no way this angle could be 150 degrees. So use kind of your knowledge about acute, obtuse, right, and straight angles as well when you're measuring to determine which of the two measures to use. So the measure of ABC is 30 degrees, and this would be an acute angle. Okay, number 5. So we're going to measure angle ABC. I'm going to use BC as my horizontal and B as my vertex. Okay, so I line up my horizontal with 0 degrees, and that means I'm going to use the bottom row to measure. So I'm going to go counterclockwise, and it looks like 100 degrees is what this angle measures. So how to choose as well, if you're confused, you could see, well, this angle looks like it's an obtuse angle. It's not acute, so it would have to be the 100 degrees. So that's another way to help you if you're confused about which measurement to use. So because the angle is 100 degrees, that means this is an obtuse angle. Okay, for number 6, you may have to tilt your paper around a little bit sometimes to measure these angles. So I'm going to move my paper around, and I'm actually going to end up using BA as my horizontal this time, and I'm going to line up my vertex with the center of the protractor. And 0 degrees is at the top, so I'm going to use the top row to measure, and I'm going to go clockwise, so this angle measures 70 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to label it with 70 degrees. And the measure of ABC is 70. Because it measures 70, this would be an acute angle. Okay, let's go to the next page. So page 16. Okay, problem number 7. So whenever an angle forms a straight line, we just call this, this is going to measure 180 degrees. So this would automatically be 180 degrees. So if you see an angle that forms a straight line, it's going to be 180 degrees, and this would be a straight angle. Okay, now you're probably looking at number 8, and you're like, wait, that looks like it's more than 180. And we're not in this class, we're not going to talk about angles that are more than 180 degrees. So that means you have to tilt your paper over. And notice how it's an obtuse angle. Okay, it's not 180 degrees, it's probably less, and it's not more than 180. So I'm going to use BA as my horizontal and then line up my vertex with the center of the protractor. So from when I line up my horizontal with 0 degrees, that would be using the top row. So from 0, I go all the way to the other end on the ray, and it looks like it's 165 degrees. Okay, so this would be a 165 degree angle. So the measure of ABC is 165 degrees, and that makes it an obtuse angle. Okay, so this is lesson 6.0b. We're going to move on to lesson 6.0c.